Welcome. Our question this time is, does fine-tuning of the universe give us evidence that God exists? Now, if you're not familiar with the term fine-tuning, what that means is that within the universe there are certain constants that we are aware of scientifically that are tuned to a certain value. So, for example, the speed of light. 186,000 miles per second is the speed of light. Scientists are reliant on some of those being consistent, and the universe is also reliant on those variables being right on the number they are on. There's about 20 of them, and if you were to turn any of them up a little bit or down a little bit, the whole universe as we know it would fall apart. And why is that significant? Because the chances of that happening by accident are astronomically low. And so let's look at some numbers here. So you ever do that penny thing? I don't have a penny with me, but if you take a penny and you double it every day for a month, you would get $1 million. Or you could look at it this way. Now, I'm not saying anybody's betting here, but let's say someone said, you know what? Your chances of winning $100 were 1 in 100. Say, okay, that's not bad. Well, what if they said your chances of winning were 1 in a million? You'd say that's not great. 1 in a billion? You would say, I'll never win. Okay. And there's only 7 or 8 billion people on the earth. So if anyone ever gave you those odds in anything, you wouldn't take them because it would just be so far-fetched. I'm just trying to get some figures in our minds of how much these numbers are. Now, when it comes to a trillion, I remember once reading what $1 trillion was. And so imagine you had a stack of quarters and you stacked them up. You know, how many would you have if you went as tall as a house? Thousands? What if you went as high as the atmosphere in the earth? You might be into millions. Well, if you kept stacking them and you stacked them far enough to reach the earth to the sun, that would be 1 trillion quarters. So it's just some really extremely high number that's almost beyond our ability to fathom. But that's just $1 million, okay, or 1 million quarters. Again, just trying to get you familiar with some numbers that are within our realm of believability. Now, why is that important? Because when it comes to fine-tuning of these different variables, like the speed of light, the Planck's constant, the weak, strong forces of energy, and there's more. The possibilities of all of them being at that exact number that they are in order to have life in the universe is way more than 1 trillion times 1 trillion to 1 that it happened by accident. And yet we only have one universe. It was only happened once. So what are the chances that that could have been by accident? And I would say it didn't happen by accident. You know, you just look at those numbers and you can't explain them away. Now, I've heard somebody say, well, that's just the way it is. Now, it's odd that a scientist that will use all science their whole life, and then when they get to an answer they can't answer, they say, well, they abandon science and go to blind faith, and they just don't want to believe it. Right now, there isn't really a good answer other than that, yeah, it was designed by purpose. It was designed intentionally that way. And so if we believe in God, it makes perfect sense because God is intelligent. He was all intelligent being, all powerful, And so when he created the universe, he created it with purpose. And he knew that he was going to be creating life within the universe. And so when he created it, he created all the variables that were necessary to be finely tuned to exactly what they are so that they could form life within the universe and do it in one chance, like one creation event. And so it makes perfect sense when we believe in God that it was designed that way. One time it happened and we have life and we're here today to prove it. Whereas if you don't have intelligence at the beginning and it's just random events, what's the chances of our universe happening in one chance out of a trillion times a trillion and more? See, it just doesn't make sense. So that's just another indication that God exists, and we're using reasonable facts and things that we are aware of to explain it.